Hey everybody, welcome back. Today's vlog is going to be trying to catch me up on my TBR for the month. It's been a rough month reading-wise for me. I'm a little bit in a slump. There's just been a lot going on. So I'm further behind in my TBR than I typically am for the month. So I figured this weekend I was going to prioritize reading, just try to sit down and see how many books I can get through. So I'm kind of going to be doing a 24-hour-esque readathon. I am going to time myself. I'm not going to put a countdown on, I'm just going to time, and I'm going to try to hit 24 hours of reading by Sunday. So right now it's Friday night. I don't have anything really going on much this weekend, so I think I can prioritize this. It is the 15th, so we're already halfway through the month. So the book I'm going to start with is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and it is a Romeo and Juliet-esque retelling. I don't know if I want to say retelling or like reimagining, because they are kind of rivals in this, like themselves, not just their families. They're both the leaders. You have Juliet and you have Roma. They're both the leaders of separate gangs in Shanghai, but they also have a history that makes them kind of enemies. So it's not fully like a Romeo and Juliet type thing, but there's still like dueling gangs in the city, and things start to happen that causes problems for both of the gangs. So they have to kind of team up to figure out how to overcome that other power. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I've heard good things about the series, so I'm very excited to finally start it, and we'll see how I feel. I'll check back in once I've read enough to have an actual opinion. So update number 1, I'm about 50 minutes in and about 55 pages. And I've met, obviously, Roma and Juliet already. They are the heirs to both of the gangs. They're not, like, in charge of them, but they're the heirs to them. And all we really know is that there's some type of history between Roma and Juliet. We don't know too much about it yet. A little bit of spattering that they may have been friends as kids, but they had to do it in secret. But something happened, and now Juliet hates him. It'll be interesting to see how that, evolves. We pick up where, like, Juliet's coming back from being in the States for 4 years for school, and she's back, and Roma comes to one of the Scarlet Gang's burlesque clubs. He comes there to talk to somebody. He doesn't know Juliet's back until he gets there, but he goes there to talk to somebody about the fact that White Flowers, which is his gang, and Scarlet gang members were both found in the same location, killed, along with a police officer the night before. So he thinks it's, like, fishy. He didn't think it was, like, gang related necessarily because of the wounds inflicted upon them and everything. So he comes there to try to see if they know anything and if they can work together to figure it out. And she pretty much is just like, get out. That's kind of what's happened. And then, like, now we're into Roma trying to investigate a little bit more into what's going on. So this does seem, I think this is fantasy. I'm assuming it's fantasy based on, like, the direction the book's going in, but I think I'll know more in a little bit longer. But I decided to do an update because I need to take my contacts out because I'm squinting. So I'm gonna go do that, probably change into something comfy, and then just snuggle in with this book for the rest of the night and see how far I can get. It is now Saturday morning. I only read for like 2 hours last night. I did read in the morning before I had to go do some, like, personal stuff, but I only read 2 hours worth of this book when I started this video last night, so I was a little tired. I'm up to chapter 12, which is page 127, and at this point, we're really not too much into, like, a romance. I think that that's big part of the book at some point, but we're learning a little bit and a little bit and a little bit at a time about what happened between Juliet and Roma. And then both sides, like, both gangs are trying to come to terms with the fact that more and more keeps happening with this, like, monster, and that it probably is something paranormal. So that's kind of where we are now. I don't want to give too much. I mean, there's not really much to give away at this point, but I'm not going to obviously spoil the plot. But I'm enjoying it. It's reading really fast. It's set in the 1920s, which it doesn't feel like it's set in the 1920s when I'm reading it. It feels kind of modern, other than the fact that they're not talking about, like, cell phones and stuff like that. At times I forget that that's the time frame it's set in until they say something. And I think I also said that she went to the US for college, which is not the case, because I think she's only 19, so it probably was like high school. She was there for 4 years. but we're like meeting her sisters, we're meeting his friends. They both kind of have one person at it within their gang that's battling them a little bit for like the heir status, even though they're both the named heirs to both of their gangs. So they're dealing with like similar things is essentially what I'm trying to say. I'm interested. It's a lot more interesting than I thought it would be, and it's reading faster for the beginning than I thought it would. I thought it would be very dry at the beginning, but it's not. So hoping it continues on with this trend. And I don't know that I'm gonna hit 24 hours now, that I only read 2 hours yesterday, because that means I have to read at least 10 hours today and tomorrow, and I don't know that that's gonna happen. So we'll see. I'm gonna try my best. I'll read as much as I can. That's all I can do. So I will check back in later once I've read a good chunk more. So final update before I finish, because I've got about, I think 130-ish pages, maybe a little bit less than that to finish. So this seems more like a mystery thriller kind of novel to me than it does like a fantasy or a romance. Like there is romance, there's aspects of fantasy because there's like paranormal things happening, I would say. But it's really interesting, and that's why I think it's moving so fast, is that the like main part of the story is the mystery, like what's going on, how to fix it, and like what's causing it, all that kind of stuff. So I really am enjoying this more than I thought. I'm not like flying through it. I think I've been reading just under 5 hours. So it's still take me a decent amount of time. Like the whole length of the book will, but I am enjoying it. I like the characters. I like their friends. Like a lot of the side characters I'm really enjoying, like Juliet's cousins. Roma has a cousin and I think a friend. I think one of the guys is related to him, the other one's not. And I'm enjoying getting to know them. So I'm hoping that they are the ones. I know that this is a duology and there's a novella with this one, but I know that the Foul Lady Fortune has one. I think there's 1 or 2 novellas with that, and that's a duology as well. So I'm not sure who those books follow. I haven't gone into looking at that yet, but I'm assuming it's going to follow people that are being introduced in these books as side characters. I'm excited to see how this ends, and I'm assuming some type of a cliffhanger since there's a second book, but I'm enjoying it. I really am. I don't think it's going to be like a 5-star read, but it's definitely going to be a higher rated book, I think, at this point. So I will finish this, and then when that's done, I'll check back in and give you my final thoughts. I finished These Violent Delights. I loved this book. It was less a romance and more just like a mystery, like I said, but it was so good. And the ending, I know I want the second one, but I'm waiting till Our Violent Ends comes out in paperback, and I don't think that's till June or July, I can't remember. So I have to wait. But it was so good. I gave it a 4.5 for now. I may lower it a little bit, but it will definitely be in the 4-star range. But I loved it. It was so good. The characters were great. The story was great. The world was interesting and different, and it was unlike anything I've read recently or like ever. So highly recommend that one. I'm very excited to read the second one and then the other duology whenever I get through that. So the next book I'm going to pick up is Holly by Stephen King. This is about Holly Gibney, and she's called at her like detective agency to look into a woman's missing daughter. And when she goes to the town to help this woman, she meets these 2 professors that live in this house right down the street. And all the like inside of the flap says is something like they have an unholy secret living in their basement that may be related to the disappearance of this girl. So that's all I know going into it. I loved Holly Gibney in previous books she's been in that he's written her into. So I'm excited for this book. And this will be my third Stephen King book this month. So hopefully the last one. But his books are just they're good. They're just very detailed. And they tire me out a little bit to read sometimes, but they're always very good. So once I start reading that one and I get far enough into it to have a reaction, I will check back in. So it's now Sunday morning, and I read for about 9 hours total now, which means I read for 7 hours yesterday. Not as many as I would have liked, but I did make some choices to leave my house, what I wasn't planning on originally. So today I do not plan on leaving, so I should be able to read a bit more. I was reading Holly last night, and I've got up to page 160. So far, I'm really enjoying this, actually. I'm moving through a lot faster than I usually read through one of Stephen King's books. And it is set during like the pandemic time, so there is a lot of reference to the pandemic and everything that's going on in the world at that time, mainly the US at that time. Holly's dealing with a lot of personal things and decides to take on this case that his mother calls all panicked. So her daughter's missing. It's been missing for quite some time. I think like 3 weeks by the time she contacts Holly. And the police haven't really helped because they think she's just a runaway, because she's like 24. I think she's 24. So yeah, they think she's just a runaway, which if you listen to a lot of true crime stuff, that's typically what happens over 18. They just assume the person ran away. But at the same time, you're getting Holly's story. There's also trips into the past for this like professor couple that I think I mentioned. She finds out like what's going on in their house isn't what it seems. So you're going back in time to different situations that happened with these people and how that, and you obviously can figure out how it relates to this story at the time. So that's interesting. Started off pretty strong with a flashback. So you get what's going on pretty quickly into the book. The storyline's still developing because you don't understand why they're doing what they're doing until a little bit further along. And I'm sure more is going to come out because of that too. So I am enjoying it. I still have like 60% of the book left to read. So I'm not sure what's going to change in that time frame, but I will continue reading and then update when I made it further along to have a different update, I guess. So talk to you soon. All right, so final update before I finish this book, because I only have like 140 pages left or something. It's still really good. The frustrating part is that like we're reading it and we know who the bad people are and we know what's happening, but Holly doesn't. So it's so frustrating to be like, you're right there, like you see them. I don't know. It's one of those stories where like you're reading the like killer's point of view and what they're doing, but then you're also reading the detective's point of view and you're seeing like how close they're getting, but still not realizing it. So you're just waiting for like that aha moment. So that's what's keeping it going, I think, is just waiting for that moment where she puts it all together. But I'm very much enjoying it. Probably going to be one of my favorite books of his that I've read so far. So I've only read like 12 of his books, so I can't say that I've read a ton of his backlog, but I'm really enjoying this. And I really do like Holly as a character because she has been in other books of his. So I'm sad that this may be her only remaining book, but we'll see. We'll see what he does. But all right, I'm gonna finish and then I will give my final thoughts. So I finished Holly and I loved it. Honestly, I don't know if it's my highest rated. I gave it 4.5 stars. I don't think I've ever rated a Stephen King 5 stars. A few of them have been in the 4 range. In the ones I can think, I think this is my 12th book of his. This is my favorite that I can think of off the top of my head. And I think it was honestly because, and I mentioned this, Holly has been a character in previous books, and I have read all of those. So she was in Mr. Mercedes, Finders Keepers, and End of Watch, which is the Bill Hodges trilogy. She was in all 3 of those books, and then she was also in The Outsider, which I also read. And those books are all mentioned in this one. Stephen King is known for referring to his other books in books that come after that. This book was a little different in that aspect. There were like hints about some of the other, like I think there was a Carrie analogy or something in there, and there was another one, I can't remember exactly what it was that I caught, but they do talk about a lot of the things that happened, and like Bill Hodges is mentioned in here a lot. So I think it's important to read the other ones to really connect with the character. I think that's why I connected with the book so much, but I really liked that she was finally the main character in this book. So that is the end of that one. And I'm going to take a little break before I start the next book because my eyes are burning. I am just over 13, like literally 13 hours and 39 seconds into reading this weekend. I'm probably not going to get to 20 hours, but you know, life happens and I made choices that took me away from reading like I wanted to yesterday, but we'll see. So the next book I'm going to read is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This is, I think, most people know what this book is about. Powerless was based off of it, but there's two types of people in this world, the silver and the red. The silver are the elite, and the reds are the lowly, and there's powers involved. I don't know all the details, but I've heard mixed reviews about this, and now that I've read Powerless, I don't know if this will just be repetitive to me, which I don't think is fair because this book came first, so I'm definitely going to give it its due. And I feel like I'm finally getting back into reading. Like, the beginning of this month was a little slower for me than normal, but I loved Holly and I loved Our Violent Delights. Like, this has been a very good vlog for me. I've loved both of those books, and now I'm like really back into it. So I'm hoping this book continues it. At least I hope I enjoy it enough that I'm not gonna slump out. So, gonna take a break, and then I'm gonna get into Red Queen. So first and probably only check-in I'm gonna have for this, because I'm already halfway through it, I'm actually really enjoying this. I know a lot of people have said they didn't like it after they read Powerless because it's so similar, but I think they're different enough that I'm enjoying this book as well. I think the characters are different. Their relationship's a little bit different. This seems like more serious, I want to say, than Powerless did. The vibe's there, so I get that, but I don't know. I'm enjoying it more than I thought, because I was a little worried after seeing some people say that if you read Powerless first, you're not gonna like this. So far, so good. I'm enjoying what I believe will be the romance and the development of different relationships between different characters and just different characters in general. You have your like villain characters, you have your love interests, you have your just other side characters, you have the family, all of that. So I'm enjoying that, and I definitely think I will continue this series unless this book completely ends on a like terrible note. I don't know, but so far so good. I will come back with my final thoughts at the end. Hey everyone, it's time to close out the vlog. It is now the next day. I was too tired last night to wrap this up. So it is Monday evening, and I'm just gonna go quickly through the 3 books that I did read in this vlog, and the total time I read was, I think, like 18 hours and 20 minutes. So I did not get close to the 24 hours, but you know what? Life happens and it's fine. So the first book I read was These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. I really enjoyed this book so much more than I thought I was going to. It was 4.5 stars. I am so excited to read the next one, and I am also excited to read the Fat Lady Fortune duology and I think there's 2 novellas in between this duology and the Fat Lady Fortune duology. So I'm excited to read those as well. I'm not gonna go buy it right away. Obviously, I'm still on my buying ban, but it is going to be higher on my list now to pick up once I'm allowing myself to buy books again next month. So really enjoyed that one. The second book was Holly by Stephen King, which I believe I said earlier in the vlog was probably my favorite Stephen King book I've read to date. This is my 12th. I did count. It is my 12th Stephen King, and I really liked it. I don't know if it was because it was more modern. It does mention the pandemic a lot because it takes place during those years. So if that bothers you, probably don't read it. I would also say read up the trigger warnings before you go into this. I was shocked a little bit at some things that happened that I wasn't expecting, and I soldiered through, but some people might be bothered by some of the things that happened. So I did look up afterward. There are trigger warnings listed online, not in the book itself, but online. So personally, I would look them up if you're interested in reading this, just to be sure that something that's gonna bother you isn't gonna happen. This was also 4.5 stars. That was a trend for this vlog because the final book I read was Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, and I loved this book as well, also 4.5 stars. So this was a very successful reading vlog for me. This book has been compared to Powerless because Lauren Roberts said that she took inspiration from this book for Powerless. This is one of the books that she took that from. And you can see that that's definitely there. The stories are slightly different though, so I wouldn't go into it expecting it to be exactly the same. To me, it was not exactly the same. This was a little more of a mature version, I think, of Powerless. I think Powerless reads more YA than this does. I enjoyed them both. They were like, Powerless was a 5-star read for me, and this was a 4.5, so they're both right up there. I think I'm gonna like the books after this because of how this book ended. Again, I don't have any of these. This series and These Violent Delights series were not ones that I was focusing on, but then I picked them in my blind choosing of TBR, so I read them. But again, the next book in this is Glass Sword, so I will be picking that up as one of the priority books once I'm off my book buying ban. So very excited to continue this series. And I'm very excited for this vlog. It is now over, but I think it was a good reading weekend. Did I read as much as I would have liked? No, I probably could have gotten another book in. I will probably see you guys again for another vlog before the end of the month. I may do like an Easter weekend blindly choosing my books because I still have a bunch of books that are wrapped. So I'm not gonna unwrap them. I have like 20 some books. And I think I'm also going to still keep them wrapped to choose my TBR for next month. And then I will unwrap them all that remain. So look out for that vlog. So I'll see you all in that video, or if I release another one in between. So thanks for watching if you've made it this far, and I'll see you next time.